This past week, Murder Andy Ngo was written on a large wall in downtown Portland next to the Antifa slogan, ACAB, all cops are bastards. I'm a journalist who reports on American political violence. By speaking to you today, I'm putting my life in my own hands. For years, I've been the victim of hundreds of threats by Antifa extremists. They threatened to kill me. They spread lies about me being a fascist, a neo-Nazi, even a terrorist. They showed up to my family's home in the middle of the night. And they nearly killed me when they beat me in broad daylight, within view of the police, in the middle of downtown Portland last year. I spent 30 hours in hospital as my brain bled from subarachnoid hemorrhage.
Do you condone what happened to Andy Ngo last week? He was a journalist got attacked?
Yes. The right-winger that got attacked? Yes.
The mob that attacked me with weapons used gloves that had fiberglass material on the knuckles. So these weren't just bare-handed fists going to my head and my face. They were harder. They were weapons with the aid of these gloves.
It's horrible.
Police in Portland and elsewhere have sustained serious injuries from rocks, concrete chunks, IEDs, and more. The weapons Antifa extremists use are intentionally designed to be deceptive to legal observers, media, and those around them. For example, projectiles that may look like water balloons are actually filled with paint and used to blind police before they're pelted with rocks. Umbrellas are fastened with discreet pocket knives at the end. Projectiles that look like plastic water bottles are actually frozen solid. Innocuous-looking handheld lasers are shined in an officer's eyes before someone with a slingshot aims ball bearings at his face.
It's like the left is watching this occur and they don't care. But there is no surprise. America is and I believe this is going to backfire on the left completely in 2018. We're finally witnessing what the left is willing to do. It is an outcry against Donald Trump. It's an outcry against everybody who voted for this man. And I think people in America are finally getting sick of it.
Why for so long did the so-called mainstream media, though, call them counter-protesters? It was never Antifa, never named. Now, finally, some, like the Washington Post, you pointed out, and others, are finally naming this group as Antifa, attacking peaceful conservative protesters.
Well, in this particular case, Pete, I don't know that it was Antifa per se, because they were highlighting the black members of this group attacking the other folks. I actually think this is BLM implanted within Antifa and sort of being able to have their violence show up and blame it on Antifa. Not that, I mean, both groups are violent, quite frankly, but BLM is actually saying if we can hide our animus inside of Antifa, then maybe things will go differently.
When I was undercover in Seattle's so-called autonomous zone, which was inhabited by many Antifa, I received manuals and booklets providing instructions on how to use protesters as human shields and cover. These are organized and committed violent extremists who look to destabilize the country. They are trained to use encrypted means of communication to hide their trail. Those who get injured or arrested are regular protesters and even journalists. Antifa melt away into the black wall. The First Amendment is paramount. The street protests must be constrained by the rule of law. Law enforcement play one of the most important roles in keeping demonstrations safe. We've seen how this can work. During protests in D.C. at the end of last month, self-described Antifa Legba Carrefour was recorded in a viral video hammering chunks off the street to throw at police.
I had not heard about Antifa. I just pulled an article June 9th by Ryan Lucas saying no sign of Antifa so far. A Justice Department case is brought over unrest, and it looked at 51 cases brought by the Department of Justice. There's no one associated with Antifa who's been charged, but let's assume one were to get involved. We know that there's extremist right-wing white supremacist activity, and for some reason there's this obsessive focus on Antifa, and I hope that's not just some kind of political ploy. But in any event, my question is, when these extremists get into a crowd to try to incite by throwing a bottle or something, if Boogaloo and the Proud Boys and the Ku Klux Klan throw a bottle or start saying, kill the police or whatever. How does that change the dynamics of the protest?
City Council in Minneapolis voted unanimously to disband the police department in Minneapolis, but we find out today, according to news reports, that members of the City Council who voted to eliminate the local police are being protected by private security details. And not just being protected by private security details, they're using taxpayer dollars to pay for that protection. Give me your thoughts on this obvious double standard.
Public elected officials need to be protected from terrorists and those who seek to harm them. And you know who else deserves to also be protected by law enforcement? Regular civilians, regular citizens, people like my co-panelists and people like myself.